Welcome to the Learning to Lead podcast, hosted by the Roots Community Church. The Learning to Lead podcast exists as a tool to develop and equip leaders in the local church. Our hope is that through this podcast, leaders will be empowered to lead well in the spaces God has called them into. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello. Welcome to Learning to Lead podcast. My name is Bobby Humes, and I'm sitting here with Russ Newkirk.
In the building.
Senior pastor of the Roots Community Church. Not me, Russ is. I'm the Equip Pillar lead. I get to support Pastor Russ and the other leaders in the vision for the church to create effective leaders who create effective leaders. And that's what this podcast is all about, creating effective leaders, or our journey through leadership thus far. And it has not been...
It's not that far. Yeah, we're not...
Hasn't been a long time.
Yeah.
The church has been around for how long?
Not quite 5 years.
Not quite 5 years. It would be 5 years.
April.
Easter.
April, yeah.
That's
As
awesome.
far as paperwork goes, we're about 5 years old. But as far as meeting and gathering, 5 years come this next April.
Yeah. So if you are not a part of the Roots Community Church, maybe someone sent you this podcast. We are a church in Lacey, Washington, Lacey, Olympia area, Washington. Love Jesus. We love people. And we're not experts on leadership, but what we hope is that this podcast is a tool that people can use to further along their development as a leader at the Roots Community Church or any local church.
Right. And I think that it's a perfect name for this podcast, Learning to Lead podcast.
Yeah.
Because really we're inviting people on our journey as we're learning to better lead and equip and empower God's people to be everything that He's called them to be.
And I think, in God empowering people to be everything that they've called to be, that takes us to want to be what He's called us to be.
For sure.
And that means that it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something that you can just, let's do a podcast and it's going to, be easy.
Yeah, you're not going to be done listening to this and you've become the leader that you're supposed to be.
Right.
And it's just... Yeah. I'm kind of hoping for that, actually. I'm hoping that you have a statement that you say that's just life transforming for everybody that listens.
Wow. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. You notice I didn't put that on my side of the table.
I'm gonna let you down. I think, for me, wanting to become a better leader, it all starts with my leadership journey. And I don't know about you, I made a lot of mistakes as a young leader, just wanting people to live up to my idea of a team member, and even understanding what a team member was. So I started my journey in leadership in the United States Army, and I was a horrible leader. If I had
Thanks for serving, even if you weren't doing it well. I appreciate the fact that you served.
And I wouldn't say I was like a tyrant, but I just definitely didn't care for the individual. It was really rough for me to see beyond accomplishing the mission. And really seeing people and understanding that people have layers to them, and you have to get to understand them and get to...
Do you think that's part of the era of the military that you were in? Do you think that's changed? I guess what I'm asking is, was that personality driven, do you think? Or do you think that's kind of just to fit in with the culture of getting the job done, getting the mission done, you kind of had to be that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that there are leaders and were leaders even then who really cared about individuals.
Sure.
And some of the units I was in, it was really, we're all about the mission first, but you can't do the mission without the people.
Right.
Not being able to
Not for long.
That. Yeah.
You might get some things accomplished.
Right, but who's coming with you? Where'd you start in leadership?
That's a great question. I mean, maybe I could ask this back to you first.
Okay.
Do you think leadership is a nature or a nurture thing?
Oh, the nature-nurture question.
I'm just curious because when you say that, I mean... could you get really kind of, I don't know, is it spiritual to be like in your womb, your mother's womb? You were a leader, you were predestined and called to be.
On this date, I'll come out.
Right.
It'll be warm. It'll be a nice temperature.
Other babies will be in the nursery, and I will establish my leadership amongst other babies.
I don't believe that it's all nurture. I don't believe it's all nurture. I do believe. At some point you have to, that we're all confronted with the opportunity or the call to leadership. All of us are called.
I agree.
To leadership, right? I think some of us move into it faster just because of our personalities. I think both of us are extreme extroverts.
Sure.
Not saying that you have to be an extrovert to be an effective leader.
Not at all.
Because I wouldn't say either one of us have mastered any of this, right? So, but I think being extroverted does predispose you to some of, getting people excited about what you're excited about. But on the other end, on the on the nurture part of that, I think you can develop some of those traits. You can develop effective listening. You can develop effective communication, project management. Those are some of the things, small things, but that makes a pretty good leader.
So I think that some of those things you're saying you can develop, those are mostly skills.
Sure, yeah.
So do you think that a skill can be nurtured in or developed or learned?
Yeah.
Do you think there's any personality behind leadership? Or do you think that's kind of... I mean, I think we could look at different examples of different personalities in leadership,
right?
For sure, hands down. There's lots of different ones. But if you walked in a room, do you think you could nail down like that person's a leader?
Oh no, I think that would be arrogant of me. So like, oh, you're not of our breed. Like, no, I don't think that. I think that I think we're confronted with moments in time where we step up. Or don't step up.
Yeah.
And in that stepping up in those places, it's as simple as like you're walking to a building that you work with, or you're walking up to a friend's house and you see trash and you pick it up. You're leading.
Sure.
You have assessed a situation and you've taken control of it by wanting to make it better. Like
sure.
You've done that, and that's a very sort of small way of showing that example.
Sure.
But at some point, those people in that room are going to be confronted with something, and that's how we know that they're a leader. I think after I started having conversations with some of the people in the room and sort of what the focus of what they talk about, what's their life as a leader all about is where you get some of that.
I didn't mean to try to make you into the judge all.
No.
But I do think you have a great skill in identifying leaders or potential leaders in any setting. And longing to develop that. Obviously, that's why you're in the role you're in,
right?
In equipping the disciples at the church.
I tend to look for complainers. So if you're a complainer...
So you can just get them busy.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a problem. You're right. Let's get working.
So what are you going to do about that? I mean, really. There's a reason why I think one of the veins that we'll continue to see, one of the themes we'll continue to talk about is if you see a problem, it's a reason why you see the problem.
Right.
And our role, sort of as senior leaders, I don't know, I'm not a senior yet, but is to equip.
You're getting old, but
hey man, is to equip our leaders to be all they can be as leaders, right?
Yeah.
So you may see a problem, you may not have a full solution, but we can come together alongside you and help you figure that out.
Sure.
So I think depending on the conversation of the people in that room, now the people who are just not even wanting to be a part of. It's hard for them to even move into that whole idea of that moment in time where you're presented that leadership opportunity, right? Because you don't have community, community, and you're not really trying to get past surface level relationship. It makes it kind of hard to go deeper into things.
I kind of took us down a rabbit trail.
You did a little bit. It's okay.
I think it's both. Just to kind of answer the question I gave you.
Yeah.
I think it is nature and nurture. I think all of us, by nature, are called to leadership, but I do believe that our roles oftentimes are different because we have different callings. As far as maybe positionally, it would look different. Although I do think we're all called to leadership. I think it goes back to a stewardship issue, which lands more on the nurture, right?
Okay.
All of us are called to develop the gifts, skills, our personality to most glorify God, and lead to the best of our capacity. And so, I don't know that it is an either or. I was just kind of curious your thoughts on it.
No, I don't think you come out of the womb, Alexander, the Great. I think there's some opportunities that happen, and So, tell me about your first leadership.
Yeah, well, I think for me, I was, in us preparing for this, I was thinking through that. I think for me, it was sports.
Okay.
So that's, pretty young.
Sure.
But I just had a tendency to end up in positions that were leadership driven. And
like water boy.
Yeah, lead water boy, lead towel guy. Listen, if you did that role, I'm not making fun of you.
No, not at all. Those are
I appreciated the water.
Gotta stay hydrated.
So, no, just positionally, like as a little kid, if I'm playing football, I somehow end up at quarterback, even if that's not what I wanted to play.
Yeah.
Or as point guard, maybe just because of my height. But on some level, a field or a floor general, right? That the coach would trust me to fulfill what he had asked to get done, and I felt comfortable bringing the rest of the teammates into alignment with what we're trying to accomplish, whether it's a play or maybe even just encouraging them that we got this.
Yeah.
Even if we're down, we're going to be all right. Let's do this. And so I think some of that started to develop at a really young age, and then through different jobs, even as a teenager in early 20s. Assessing kind of the bosses that I had and seeing like, okay, what are the skills they have that make them successful? What can I kind of glean from here and from there? And then I just happened to grow up in a church that really emphasized leadership.
Yeah.
And so it helped me kind of think that way, that I don't know that everywhere gets to do that. And so where you've been more probably formally trained, obviously, and we didn't get into all that yet, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
In leadership, I wouldn't say that mine was informal because there was classes I sat in and books that I was assigned, but it was more in that church leadership setting that I really think I started to flourish, and people started to give me more to do. And so, I've done, instead of church leadership, I've done everything, man. Like I've cleaned toilets and tried to get others to do so with me. I've sold T-shirts to sponsor the tsunami. I've put together a worship choir. Been in charge of building a team. Us? No, I said putting together.
Yeah.
I didn't say vocally leading that worship choir. Small things like putting together a team to do youth games, to eventually become the youth pastor, which is on a lot of levels a church inside of a church.
Yeah,
like we had almost every team that the adults had going on a different night of the week with young people. And so we were fairly successful youth ministry, pretty good size locally, and I do not discredit the fact that some of that was because I was a part of a large church.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the umbrella of that church helps to fuel that.
Sure.
But we had a good sized team and a good group of young people, and then from there I also was in charge of the whole guest services at that church, or the database at different times, assimilation, so many roles that at the time I didn't realize God was using to prepare me.
Man.
So that I've walked in so many different spaces. And really, my Pastor David, during all of that, is a great leadership teacher.
Sure.
And so he put lots of good tools in my hand to kind of spark some of that stuff that I could go and start doing it. And so I've got to lead volunteers for...
leading volunteers.
A decade. Longer than a decade. I mean, formally in positions, getting paid to do it for a decade. Before that, I did it before that also. So, and I've been the lead pastor now for, almost 5 years.
And I hear you're pretty good at it.
I do okay. Yeah. This is why it seems like I'm good at it. Ready? God's blessed me to be able to preach a little, and mostly just giving me great friends that know how to lead really well.
Right on.
Yeah, so I just surround myself with great people. So I guess I am a pretty good leader because I just hang out with people that are good leaders, and so it appears as such.
You mentioned a couple of things there, to going back to the comment about sports and, being the field general or being the court general. All those things take people being willing to follow you.
Sure.
And when I was in the Army and I was, a young sergeant and made a lot of mistakes, people follow me because of my title, not because they wanted to follow me.
Sure.
And I think that was the core of where I got it wrong. I think if I had invested my time and energy into them as people, them following after anything would have been like, we're not doing this because we have to. We're doing this because, Bobby's a great guy, and I know he's going to be there for us.
And I wish I had, I can't remember which book it's in, but John Maxwell, one of his leadership books, one of his bajillion leadership books.
Yeah.
It's probably in several of them.
Sure.
But the lowest level of leadership, he says, is positional.
Yeah.
And really, that'll only buy you time for you to prove if you are a leader or not. Like if you really fit that title or not. And so sounds like you had the opportunity to let people know that it was all about the title.
You know, little beating your chest a little bit. Do what I say. You know, and it's just horrible leadership. Another thing that you talked about is leading volunteers. And I think we should dedicate a whole show to leading volunteers. Yeah. We love our volunteers. The local church, especially our church, thrives off of volunteers. We don't have
We're volunteer driven.
Right. We don't have a huge paid staff.
No.
And it's about some things that we're going to talk about in later shows. I don't want to give too much away because I want to keep you guys coming back. But mission, vision, values, communicating those things effectively, and giving people a chance to be creative in their own way in how they how those things look. I think it goes back to a clear understanding of what the job is of church leadership. Sure. Which I think is what you're alluding to, us not getting too far into right now because it'll give away a whole podcast. It'll give away. But just the fact that it goes back to why we're doing this and what your role is in equipping people to do what God's called them to do. Yeah. That we really just believe that all of us have a role in this, and just because somebody gets paid to do it during the week doesn't give them a higher level or role or a platform or so we try to drive that down through culture, right? Yeah. That every role is so important because I think the Bible says that. Sure. And so as long as we keep preaching that, I think it'll keep working that way. And I think, just looking at backgrounds is a good way for us to let people know, we're not, Harvard business guys. Not at all. Although you are much closer to that than I am. Yeah, I don't know. But, by the end of this podcast, we might be calling him by a different title. So who knows? But, I think it's very important that we all have a history. And I, too, started cleaning bathrooms in a church. And carrying the pastor's briefcase, different pastor, and just watching. I think so. Everybody knows I don't have a briefcase. No, you don't. He has a backpack. It's awesome. I don't carry his backpack, but I think it's the best classroom we have are the places that we are right now. Like no matter where we are in this whole leadership gamut of where we could be, where you are is a great place for you to be. I was just going to say that too often people think about the next thing. And aren't I keep using the word steward, but aren't good stewards of where they're at right now. Yeah. Or don't manage well what God has given them in the moment. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't always see what's going on right now as how God plans to use it. And so I can look back very clearly and see when I worked in therapeutic foster care, working with teens of all kinds of broken backgrounds. Yeah. And knowing, okay, God kind of gifted me to work with these young people, but not realizing what he was doing and preparing me and teaching me how to teach parents how to parent. Wow. And how to have behavioral contracts with young people and do all these different things. And then I walk into a role as youth pastor and I've picked up these skills that were necessary for me to do well. But at the time not realizing that's why he had me in that space. I enjoyed it. Yeah. And so I tried to honor him in it. Sometimes doing better than others. But even in the youth pastor role, I mean, that was my title, but I gave you a small list of some of the other things that were associated with that in my role being on staff at a fairly large church. And not realizing that all those little roles, he was doing that to prepare me for launching our church. Yeah. And so I always wonder, I want to be good at what I'm doing now. And I do kind of wonder, like, okay, why am I learning this right now? Right. Each thing. Why are we doing podcasts right now? Why are we doing this? What's up? Yeah. I think it's awesome. I'm reminded of the Kazone experience. Yeah. Which we want all of our leaders to have some time in that awesome tool that's livechurch.tv. Yeah. Right. Craig Rochelle's. I think it's just life.church. Life.church. Yeah, great. On the open resource page. Man. It's available resource, and we are using everything we can get our hands on. Right. It's good stuff. Yeah. And not only is it good for the church, it's good for individuals to say that nothing in the tapestry of my life is by mistake. All the places where I've been, the situation I'm in now, God is trying to show me something. And that rings true in leadership as well. In my background, after the Army, I went into public sector. And I started recruiting I realized that I like talking to people. And not just to talk to them because I like talking, so we do podcasts.
That's fun too.
Right? But to really hear their story and hear what motivates them and what gets them excited. And to connect them to jobs and opportunities. So I started doing some career coaching. I really started being well at taking people's skill sets and being able to transfer them into other careers and getting them to market themselves for that. I still kind of do that on the side for free, especially if you're at the Roots Community Church. But I just love seeing people operate where they're best suited to go, and I get to do that at the Roots, you know, and so it's really exciting. And then as I started to grow in public sector, working in state government here in Washington State, taking classes in project management, learning a lot about the different theories about time management, teaming and grouping and all those kind of things, communication, goal setting, like all these things were, and still are, a very important part of my brand as a leader. And so, you know, it's not by mistake that I got to do all those things, and God is redeeming those things for His purpose. And for all the leaders listening right now, like the places you're in, no matter what job you're in, you know, God is building you up. He's giving you opportunities to learn and grow in that space so He can use it for His glory. I think that's awesome.
It's very, very cool.
Yeah. So for me in church, I kind of went in interesting path. So started on the worship team, and then started doing music directing, which was awesome. Wrote a couple cool songs with our team. We sing those at the church, and then now Equip Pillar lead. So you know, our team is 4 strong. So I'm just recruiting right now. So if, you know, might be somebody listening and wants to join. But
you might be anywhere in the world, and Bobby would be okay with you moving to Lacey, Washington.
Right. I'll send you a map.
Not a plane ticket.
Not a plane ticket. You a map. Dave Ramsey.
A link for you to Google Map. Lacey, Washington. You get here, and he will put you to volunteer work. Just to be clear, he's not paying you.
No.
Volunteer work.
Let's get it. You know, and it's really awesome. I'm always humbled and amazed to see what God is doing in Kazone and the people who are starting to serve and feeling like they're in a place where they're best glorifying God, and that team is better because they're there. That's very important to us. That's kind of our litmus test for if people are where they need to be or where they think they need to be.
Right.
You want to talk a little bit about serving more in the philosophy of serving at the Roots, that open hand approach?
Sure. Yeah, I think that sometimes, you know, if you're listening to this and you don't come from a church background, I think it might apply in job spaces as well, but definitely inside of the church. If you've grown up in church, you've probably seen that, you know, obviously the mission is huge.
Yeah.
At any and all churches, because the call is to make disciples, and there's lots of lost people out there. There's also lots of different ways you can go about making disciples, and the vision is massive. And so sometimes what can happen is the pull of that vision is so strong, and there's so many real things that need to get done that when somebody shows interest in being a part of the church, the team, we can have a tendency to plug them where we need them instead of put them where they're best fit.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not as clear. Some people it's really clear, right? Like they walk in and you can kind of see, like, man, all over you, you're kind of showing this skill set or this passion or a combination of those. And we still want them to go through some assessments to help them realize that on their own and walk with them and figuring that stuff out. But what we realize is that anytime you place somebody in you kind of a box, let's say, of a role, and don't tell them that they can get out of that and try something different, and maybe it's not where they fit. Well, if you're stuck in a place that you can't leave, and the only person that can tell you to leave is on the outside of that, well, that's a jail cell. And so early before we're just getting ready to start the church, I'm walking around and God put on my heart so clear. In fact, it had me weeping. Will the vision empower or imprison? Because I think sometimes even in the church, it's unfortunate if people can feel imprisoned into a role that they play inside the church. So instead of it being life-giving, it can be life-draining.
Sure.
And so our hope is that the door is always open for every one of these roles that people would play, that on both sides it would be open and there'd be open communication. we fully believe, and it doesn't mean it's easy, that God has all the resources for everything He has called us to do.
Yeah.
And so we just have an open-handed approach that no one owes us anything, and that our hope is to equip them and empower them to do everything God's called them to do, and believe that God will take care of the needs that we have, that we don't have to try to force people into spaces that they don't best fit.
Yeah.
And we want to be family and walk through this and have it be a journey. So if you jump into one of those and it doesn't work, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Whether the leader needs to have a conversation with the person serving, or the person serving needs to have a conversation with the leader about this just isn't most edifying or building up, strengthening the church, isn't really fulfilling for me, and I don't think it most glorifies God. Let's find another space. It's not a fail. In fact, we've just figured out another spot that it isn't, so we're closer to figuring out where it is.
And the same goes for leadership.
Man.
Like and leadership burnout. And in the next couple episodes of this podcast, we're going to talk about the call to leadership. And we had a whole list of C words like character and communication.
Charisma.
And confidence.
Coachability.
Oh, wow. So the list just keeps going.
Well, I can't wait to do that one.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think the most important thing we want to land on is that the reason why we're doing this is to empower leaders. First, at the Roots, of course. You guys know us, you see us, you can ask us questions, things like that. But also other leaders who may hear this and just may want a perspective of leaders who are trying to do the best we can do with what God has given us. And we fail. And God is so gracious. So, Russ.
Yeah, I wanted to say there's only one perfect leader, and it's not either of us. And so any benefit you can get from this, we are massively grateful to the one who is perfect.
Yeah.
That He would work in and through us, and realizing that this first episode is just a bit of an introduction and inviting you into the conversation as we long to grow and learn to lead, that you would also learn to lead along with us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. It's been fun sitting here with my homeboy, my pastor, my friend, Russ Newkirk. I'm Bobby Humes. You're listening to Learning to Lead podcast. See you next time. Bye.
Love you guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Learning to Lead podcast. We hope this time has been beneficial to you and your leadership in the local church. We'd love to have you join the conversation. Send your questions and comments to equip@theroots.church. Don't miss a moment, subscribe today, and share the podcast with leaders like you. Thanks again for listening to Learning to Lead, hosted by the Roots Community Church.